My name is Suzanne Schwab. I'm with PlaceWorks. We're the consultant that's been leading the specific plan effort. I have a whole host of people with me tonight who are supporting us on this project. But first, I'm going to hand it over to Cecilia with the city. She'll give us a quick welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cecilia Gallardo-Daly. I'm the Assistant City Manager with the City of Costa Mesa. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight for workshop number 4. It's the 4th in our series of workshops on planning for the Fairview Developmental Center. We have a whole professional team here made up of consultants and staff that are going to walk you through the end result of all of the public input and community participation we've had so far in this process. So thank you for making time to join us tonight.
Yeah. Bienvenidos a la reunión número 4 sobre el desarrollo del Fairview. Tenemos muchos planeadores que van a compartir los planes del uso del suelo. Gracias por su participación.
Okay, just to get us started here, I have a few, just the Zoom, overview for all of you if this is your first time joining a virtual workshop. We are going to use we're going to have a presentation, and then we're going to use breakout rooms, which are similar and mimic the stations that we had at our in-person workshops last week. So if you have a general question or need some help, please be sure to use the chat box. We, as Bill just did for us, have Spanish translators and speakers on with us this evening as well. That will be in a separate breakout room. So please either raise your hand or put in the chat that if you would like to participate in that room. And then you can also raise your hand once we're in breakout rooms if there are specific questions and topics and things that you would like for us to go through with you. And we'll give at the end of this presentation an overview of what those breakout rooms are.
Las personas de habla española, si quieren participar, tenemos una sala en español. Solo hay que escribir en chat que desean estar en la sala con los planeadores que hablan español. Gracias.
Okay, I'm going to take just a moment here. Molly, are we going to do we have anybody who we need to do a Spanish?
I'm not seeing any hands raised. The room is open. So Maria, if you want to head in there and get set up for Bill. And Bill, if you'll wait just a moment and just remind everyone in Spanish that if they need Spanish to go ahead and raise their hand.
Yeah. Si desean participar en español, solo hay que levantar la mano hacia abajo y vamos a estar en la sala de habla española. Pulse el símbolo de la mano allí abajo. Gracias.
I'm not seeing any hands raised, but we'll give it maybe just 30 more seconds.
About this, I'll advance the slide so everyone can start to get an overview of what we'll be covering this evening.
Okay, I'm not seeing any, but Bill, I'm going to go ahead and send you into that Spanish room.
Okay.
Okay, everyone. Well, thanks for holding tight while we got some of the housekeeping out of way. As Cecilia mentioned, this evening we're here to share where we're at in this process with you. We've taken a lot of feedback through the previous 3 workshop series that we've held, and we are now at the point in time where we have land use concepts to share. So we look forward to getting all of your feedback on these tonight. We also have some updates on some information that we've received from the state regarding the site itself that we'll be covering. And then the concepts themselves have gone through some initial analysis, and we'll be able to share that, as you see here, for traffic, water, sewer, storm drain, and some very high-level site improvement cost estimates. Then we'll do the breakout rooms, and we'll be inviting you to take a survey at the end of all of this, but it will be live for a couple of weeks. So if you're not ready to take it this evening, that's okay. We also encourage you to help us get the word out. The survey will be open through August 9th. So as I mentioned, this has been a process. If you're joining us for the first time this evening, once we get to the breakout rooms, you'll be able to ask some additional or background questions if you'd like. Since we are at the fourth workshop at this point in time, you can see on the screen here, we're really moved into kind of the central focus of our planning process, where we have these conceptual land use plans. And so these are built off of the input that we heard from all of you. And really, if you think back, if you did attend some of those workshops, building upon the elements of what would make a great neighborhood. And so in addition to all of those things, of course, we've had a lot of other background meetings with some city departments. I also want to highlight for you here, we'll be talking about it more in one of our concepts when we get there, but we did need to make a scenario and some assumptions around the use of a state law called density bonus. And so in the background, since we've had that last workshop, workshop 3, I think we've wrapped up in March, there's just been a lot of other moving pieces going on. So we're excited that you're all here again this evening, and I'm just going to keep us moving along so you can see the concepts. First, though, I will hand it back over to Cecilia for a moment to talk a little bit more about those state factors. There are a few more things we learned along the way.
All right, so one of the things that we've been able to do over the last probably 5 months is meet with the state agencies that are our partners in developing a plan for the Fairview Developmental Center. The property is owned by the state of California. Early on in this process, we were notified by the state Department of General Services that they were going to be using approximately 15 acres of this site for a new emergency operations center for Southern California. So that area is what you see on the lower left-hand side in gray, where the arrow is pointing to, labeled EOC. So that 15 acres is under development. The Department of General Services has already selected a design firm contractor. So they're looking to finalize the plans for the EOC facility by the end of this year, and we'll start construction next year. So while in this graphic, we originally thought we had all of this acreage to plan for, it was reduced by 15 acres. As we continued this planning process, the longtime tenant of the property is the Department of Developmental Services, and they continue to operate some of the facilities at this site. And they also have an interest in maintaining some of the land in order to either build additional permanent supportive housing or what they call complex needs homes. So the area in the very northern part of this graphic, also grayed out, that says DDS State Housing, is area that the State Department of Developmental Services has identified for their housing needs. So what we're really left to plan is 80 acres, which is this blue area in the middle. So that's the area that we're utilizing for housing, open space and parks, and any additional amenities.
And lastly, I'll just mention and explain the arrows that you see here referencing 65 feet and 82 feet. The Emergency Operations Center is expected to have a communications tower. We're hearing potentially centrally located on that 15 acres. And it has implications for site capacity as far as especially building height goes, because it needs a clear communication line of sight to 2 other towers in the Southern California area. We are still working with the state to better understand those future needs as far as the build out of the EOC site goes. And so we'll continue to refine that as we learn more. Now, as I promised, we've got some land use concepts to review with all of you. You'll see now the boundary is refined based on what we just reviewed, but that the state housing land that we did note is going to be counted towards the number of homes that could be provided here. So I just want to make note of that. But you'll notice, Mark Lane and Merrimack have all dropped out of the previous boundary. So as we approach these land use concepts, we had the goal you see here in mind to test a range of options, incorporating all of the input that we got from you, and to allow the analysis, so the additional traffic and infrastructure studies that we did, to help to document for us what works and what doesn't work. And I'll go through that and highlight those for you, and go through each of these concepts in more specific detail, but as a high level here, just also wanted to introduce them to you. We've given them names just for ease of referencing them, and these certainly are not set in stone. The other thing I'd like to mention here is that the intent of having especially 3 concepts are for all of you to be able to react to what you like and don't like about them. You don't necessarily have to choose one concept as the preferred plan that would end up going forward. What we likely see happening is that components of each of them will likely help to inform that preferred plan. And I think all that'll come together for you a little bit more as we dive in. So I'm going to move along here to concept number 1. This is the one we're calling Fairview Promenade. And that's because this one has a grand entry. You can see as you come in from Fair Drive, there's a linear park concept and a roundabout built in. And in this concept, we are pulling forward the city's housing element goal, which is 2,300 units. Again, if you've been following the project, that probably sounds familiar. That's what we've been referencing, that prior planning effort for the site. We have also carried forward the breakdown in income units, ranging from very low to above moderate, that have also been planned for in the city's housing element. Based on some of those existing conditions reports and a market study we did, we think that given the amount of retail and commercial available on Harbor Boulevard and not too much further even from there, about 25,000 square feet of commercial retail use could be supported on the site, given the number of dwelling units and population that would be here. And then this concept tests about 14 acres of open space. And again, sort of, I'll just note here, and we'll see it in the next slide that I have for you as well. But some of the ideas we heard about connectivity through things like linear parks were carried through. And you can see how in this one it mimics even that grand entryway, and then certainly have capacity for enough land to provide some other amenities such as sports fields. Before I click into that illustrative, that concept that'll bring this to life for us, I also want to mention that the analysis done for the traffic component let us know that 2,300 units with improvements to the intersection of Harbor and Fair could support having just one entry into the project. And we know through that analysis that really sets the tipping point. 2,300 is about the maximum number of units where we would, again, just have one point of entry into the site. So I teased a little bit for you that I had this concept drawing. This is an illustrative plan view that you see here, bringing to life the land use plan that we just reviewed. You'll note, as I mentioned, we tried to see where we could fit in some sports fields and courts. the concept of connections through trails and parks. And when we dive into the breakout rooms, we have individual posters that we're going to be able to zoom in on and talk through with all of you if there are certain components you would like to see. But again, this is just one interpretation of how that land use plan could come together. This is by no means the actual, development plan. You could also see here, we maximized some townhomes along the golf course. That was another idea we heard from all of you about, trying to maximize some value to help to offset the potential for affordable housing and things like that. The state housing that we noted earlier has also been drawn in. We don't know exactly what plans the state would have. The one that you see here, surrounded by a larger amount of green open space, is a project that the state recently secured funding for. It's 3 complex needs homes, and they are estimating that they need somewhere around 5 acres for it. They, unlike the EOC, they are even in earlier processes of planning, and so we're learning, a little bit more as our talks with them go along. But we are encouraging them to see, if 5 acres is really what is needed to support just those 3 homes. Next, then, I have for you Fairview Fields. You'll notice that our property boundary jumped a little bit. If you're paying attention on the slides there, the last one was about 114.7 acres or so, or closer to 116 with this one, as we've introduced the additional access point between the site and the existing intersection at the Harbor Shopping Center. It's also the shopping center where we have Home Depot, or you might know it for the Mercado that's there. This is the concept where we tested a scenario that would use a density bonus. And I'm not going to go into specifics of density bonus law here, but once we get to breakout rooms, if you have any questions, please feel free to visit me in the site and infrastructure room, or Karen at the housing room. And we could go into much more specific detail about how that scenario came together or how that law is implemented. The intent of the law is to incentivize housing developers to build more housing, and also to incorporate affordable housing units in their developments. And then generally, as you see here, we are providing housing for a range of income types, or levels, with different housing types. And then 25,000 square feet of commercial use again, also carried through. Another idea we heard was from our workshops was, could you, I have an aging parent, I'd love for them to be able to stay in the area. So in this concept, we also tested including a senior housing tower. And this concept then lastly has the largest amount of open space provided. It's about 18 acres. And it gets close to one of the goals of the housing element, which was to provide, I think it was somewhere around close to 25% of the land as open space. But you'll see through implementation of this in the drawing, and as you get through into some of more of the analysis, it's really a trade-off then. Having a larger amount of open space then increases where the housing would be concentrated, and then the number of units that we would need to achieve, per building, looking at then housing types. Whereas you can see in this one, I don't have any townhomes shown in this particular concept. But I'll highlight for you, as you can see, we have a much larger area to provide a variety of sports fields and courts. Additionally, carrying through those ideas for trails and walkability. This concept in particular also highlighted a grid, which is something we talked about in workshops 2 and 3, some ideas for the circulation and overall design concept for the site. You can see the state housing again, we made some assumptions for how that could be provided and how that would interface with the rest of the site. And then we have a nice community park and gathering space. And I apologize, I didn't point it out very well on the last one. A lot of that the retail commercial component is provided in mixed use buildings and in the concepts you see in it. It's it's a highlight of red. And again, I encourage you when you go, especially to the housing station, you'd be able to zoom in and identify where those are in these various concepts. Our last concept then, we're calling Fairview Commons. It also has that larger project boundary with the additional access point. In this concept, we really went for testing the capacity of the site. So we arrived at 4,000 units by taking that height trajectory that I talked about for the EOC communication tower, making some assumptions for the site overall, and then maximizing housing. We arrived at about 4,000 units. We carried through the same categories of very low, low, and moderate at the very same amounts that had been in our first concept for 2,300 units. But then the additional units getting us to 4,000 are provided in the above moderate category. With an increase in those dwelling units much more significantly, we can likely support about 35,000 square feet of commercial retail space, with some of that also being allocated as office and medical office. This is the least amount of open space in all three of the concepts at right around 8 acres. So we're achieving about 10% of that, the remaining 80 acres of the site. And in this one, you can again see it come to life like the others. We balanced some of the things that we talked about in concepts 1 and 2. So I'll start down here where my cursor is. We have some of those townhome products back in where they're right along the golf course area. We do still are able to provide amenities such as the sports fields and courts that you see, but at, of course, a reduced rate considering we're at about 10 acres less of open space. There's opportunities for other community gathering spaces and parks, probably more likely private spaces, meaning they would be, you know, a pool shared by maybe 2 or 3 of the buildings over in this area. The configuration is a little bit different for the state property at the north here, but again, all of it concentrated near Harbor Village, which is the existing apartments just north of the site, and those that also surround the other properties, piece of the property you see up here. All right, so that was the overview of our 3 land use concepts, with kind of a high level pointing out for you of the differences and the things that we tried to balance and carry through for each of them. This slide is really just a recap of all of that, as I mentioned. And you can see where we aren't able to achieve everything in every single concept. So we're really trying to balance those trade-offs. And again, it doesn't mean that one of them that has the most check marks is, you know, supposed to be the winner, just helping you to see how we were able to balance all of these out. We have a lot of key considerations here for the site itself, and then a couple that, of course, we need to maintain, knowing that we have some state factors to consider. Okay, so our stations are for all of you on Zoom this evening. These are the breakout rooms. As I mentioned earlier, if it's your first time coming to a workshop, welcome, and we appreciate that you're here. If you just stay in this room when we open them up, this would be the best place to ask some initial questions about the project itself, or if you have additional questions about history or existing conditions. Then we'll be then people are able to move into all of these other topical areas, and then lastly be taking the survey. And I'll quickly move through these for you because we have posters that we can enlarge for each of these rooms. Like I mentioned, the land use concepts and project information, you can gain additional information there. For our housing station, that's where you can take a deeper dive into the breakout of all of the different units across income levels. We could also talk about density bonus law here, or any of the other questions that you have regarding those even design issues such as height or other ideas that you might have. The mobility and traffic station, this is where we did some of that initial analysis. You'll be able to find out more about the type of traffic that would be generated by the different unit mix. and those improvements that we talked about for Harbor and Fair, and then the possible new access point and alignment for that street. Open space and parks, we've got also those nice illustrative drawings where you can conceptually see the art of the possible there. And Tom, who's helping us out in that station, will be able to zoom in on some of these drawings and really help you to see what those could be, and also take your feedback on anything else that you have ideas on. I'll be at infrastructure and site design. I have some initial site improvement costs that we can walk through and share, and as well as information about all of that wet infrastructure, water, sewer, and storm drain. Before we all jump to those stations, though, I also wanted to just let you know that you're welcome to move throughout them at your leisure. And when you feel that you have the information you need, you're also welcome to hop off the call. We won't be bringing everyone back together. This is really intended to be more of an open house portion of the workshop. So please keep that in mind. As I mentioned, we also have the survey that we've started, and we launched it last week with the first workshop. It'll be going through August 9th. You're welcome to take it at any point in time. And as you know, pass it along, put it on your social media, friends, family. The more people that we can get input from, the better. So we're wrapping up our open houses. Tomorrow evening, there's a pop-up event at Iglesia Harbor Church. Later in August, we'll be compiling all the feedback we received from you. Early in the fall, probably September sometime, we'll be returning to Planning Commission and City Council, giving them an update and presenting to them the findings of the survey, the land use concepts, getting their input. After that, we'll be working through a draft preferred plan, and that's working towards a project description. So those of you familiar with CEQA, that's how we'd be preparing ourselves to kick off our environmental review. And then we would be returning to City Council to approve that preferred plan before we start those next steps, meaning before we start the environmental review and drafting a specific plan. So that sums up the presentation. Appreciate all of you joining and hanging with me as I flipped through all the slides and gave you a pretty high level overview of the concepts that are here, the analysis that we have to share. If you haven't been to our website already, fdc.com or fdchousingplan.com, all of the information that we've been providing throughout these 4 workshops and existing conditions and other things that have been done to date are all shared there as well.